Somewhere between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico lies a stretch of ocean that has swallowed ships and aircraft for centuries. Sailors once called it the Devil's Triangle. Pirates who plundered these Caribbean waters in the 1700s told stories of vessels that simply ceased to exist, crews and cargo vanishing into blue water that looked no different than any other part of the Atlantic. The Bermuda Triangle became a household name in the 1960s and 1970s, when magazine articles and best-selling books transformed a collection of maritime tragedies into something approaching mythology. Hollywood embraced the legend. Television specials promised answers but delivered only more questions. And through it all, the disappearances continued. The myth goes something like this. Ships enter the triangle under clear skies and calm seas. Radio transmissions grow strange, then stop entirely. Compasses spin without reason, and then silence. When search parties arrive, they find nothing. No wreckage, no oil slicks, no bodies. The ocean offers no evidence that these vessels ever existed at all. We know the names of some of the ships. The USS Cyclops, a 542-foot Navy collier that vanished with 306 men in March of 1918. The Marine Sulphur Queen, a tanker carrying molten sulfur that disappeared in February 1963 with 39 crew. The SS El Faro, a cargo ship lost in Hurricane Joaquin in 2015 with 33 souls aboard. We know the aircraft too. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers that took off from Fort Lauderdale on the 5th of December 1945 and never returned. The search plane sent to find them, a PBM Mariner flying boat, also vanished that same night. 27 men lost in a matter of hours. These are the stories that built the legend, and these are the stories that demand examination. Because here is the central question. Is there something genuinely different about these waters? Does the Bermuda Triangle deserve its reputation as a place where the normal rules of physics and navigation break down? Or have we constructed a mythology around what is simply an unfortunate concentration of maritime accidents? The United States Navy has an official position on this matter. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has published statements. Scientists have proposed explanations ranging from underwater gas eruptions to electromagnetic anomalies. And yet the mystery persists in the popular imagination, passed from generation to generation like a ghost story told around a campfire. To understand what is really happening in these waters, we need to examine the evidence. Not the sensational accounts published in paperback books, but the actual incident reports, the radio transcripts, the Navy investigations, and the scientific research that has been conducted over the past century. Let us begin with Flight 19. The 5th of December 1945, the Second World War had ended just 4 months earlier. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale was conducting routine training operations, preparing pilots for a peacetime military. At 2:10 the afternoon, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers lifted off the runway for a navigation exercise designated Flight 19. The flight leader was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a combat veteran with over 2,500 flight hours. His student pilots were less experienced but competent. The mission was straightforward. Fly east to the Hen and Chicken Shoals, conduct a practice bombing run, then proceed on a triangular course that would bring them back to Fort Lauderdale. The entire exercise was scheduled to take approximately 2 hours. The first indication of trouble came at 3:45 the afternoon, when Fort Lauderdale received a radio transmission from Lieutenant Taylor. His compasses had malfunctioned, both of them. He was uncertain of his position and believed he was somewhere over the Florida Keys, south of his intended course. Ground controllers attempted to establish his location. They instructed Taylor to fly north, which would bring him over the Florida mainland regardless of his exact position. But Taylor became convinced he was actually over the Gulf of Mexico, not the Atlantic. He turned his flight east, then northeast, searching for land that should have been beneath him. The radio transmissions grew increasingly confused over the next several hours. Other pilots in the flight reported their own compasses behaving erratically. Fuel became a critical concern. As darkness approached, the weather deteriorated. The final transmission from Flight 19 came at approximately 7:04 the evening. Then, silence. The Navy launched an immediate search operation. Among the aircraft dispatched was a PBM Mariner flying boat with a crew of 13. The Mariner took off from Banana River Naval Air Station at 7:27 that evening. 23 minutes later, the crew of the SS Gaines Mills observed an explosion in the sky and a ball of fire descending toward the water. The Mariner was never heard from again. No wreckage was ever recovered. The PBM Mariner was nicknamed the Flying Gas Tank because of its tendency to accumulate fuel vapors. An internal explosion remains the most likely explanation for its loss, but the timing of its disappearance, coming just hours after Flight 19 vanished, added immeasurably to the growing legend. The Navy investigation concluded that Lieutenant Taylor had become disoriented and led his flight into the open Atlantic, where the aircraft eventually ran out of fuel and ditched in heavy seas. The Avengers, built to survive controlled water landings, likely sank within minutes in the rough conditions. Without knowing their correct position, search aircraft focused on the wrong areas of ocean. 27 men died that night. Not a single piece of wreckage from those 5 Avengers has ever been found. The official Navy report listed the cause of the accident as pilot error, though Taylor's family successfully petitioned to have this changed to causes unknown. Now consider the USS Cyclops, March 1918. The United States had entered the First World War less than a year earlier. The Cyclops was a Navy collier, a massive ship designed to carry coal to fuel the fleet. At 542 feet long and displacing over 19,000 tons fully loaded, she was one of the largest ships in the Navy's auxiliary fleet. On the 4th of March 1918, the Cyclops departed Barbados bound for Baltimore. She carried 306 crew members and passengers, along with a cargo of manganese ore. The ship never arrived. No distress signal was ever received. No wreckage was ever recovered. No bodies were ever found. The Cyclops simply vanished, taking every soul aboard with her. To this day, the loss of the USS Cyclops remains the single largest non-combat loss of life in United States Navy history. Theories have proliferated over the past century. Structural failure due to overloading, capsizing in a sudden storm, enemy submarine attack, though Germany later denied any involvement, internal explosion. Mutiny. The theories are numerous, but the evidence is non-existent. The Navy conducted extensive searches. Congress held hearings. Investigators interviewed personnel from Barbados who had interacted with the ship before her departure. Nothing conclusive emerged. President Woodrow Wilson stated that the disappearance was one of the most puzzling mysteries in the annals of the Navy. Then there is the Ellen Austin. The story of the Ellen Austin comes to us through accounts published in the late 19th century, though the primary sources are difficult to verify with certainty. According to the most commonly repeated version, the Ellen Austin was an American schooner sailing through the western Atlantic in 1881 when she encountered a derelict vessel. The abandoned ship appeared seaworthy but devoid of crew. The captain of the Ellen Austin, seeing an opportunity for salvage, placed a prize crew aboard the derelict with orders to sail her to port. The two ships proceeded together until a squall separated them. When the Ellen Austin located the derelict again, the prize crew had vanished. The ship was once again completely deserted. According to some versions of the story, the captain placed a second crew aboard, only to lose contact during another storm. That crew was never seen again either. The Ellen Austin account is less well documented than Flight 19 or the Cyclops, and historians have struggled to verify all the details. But the story entered Bermuda Triangle lore nonetheless, adding another layer to the mythology of ships that seem to consume their crews. Now here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because the official position of the United States government is that there is nothing unusual about the Bermuda Triangle at all. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has stated, and I am quoting directly from their published materials, "There is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur with any greater frequency in the Bermuda Triangle than in any other large, well-traveled area of the ocean." The Coast Guard agrees. Insurance companies, whose business depends on accurate risk assessment, do not charge higher premiums for vessels transiting the Bermuda Triangle. Lloyd's of London has examined the data and found no statistical anomaly. And yet, 10 or more significant disappearances with zero recovered wreckage. The mathematics of that outcome are difficult to dismiss entirely. So what explanations does science offer? The Gulf Stream flows directly through the Bermuda Triangle. This powerful ocean current moves at speeds of 4 to 5 miles per hour and can transport floating debris hundreds of miles from the point of origin within days. A ship that sinks in the triangle does not remain where it went down. Its wreckage spreads across a vast area of ocean, making recovery exponentially more difficult. The Gulf Stream also creates its own weather patterns. Where the warm current meets cooler surrounding waters, storms can form rapidly and with little warning. A vessel proceeding under clear skies can encounter violent weather within minutes, and those conditions can dissipate just as quickly, leaving no evidence for search aircraft that arrive hours later. Then there are methane hydrates. The ocean floor beneath the Bermuda Triangle contains significant deposits of methane locked in ice-like formations called hydrates. Under certain conditions, these deposits can release massive quantities of gas into the water column. Laboratory experiments have demonstrated that water saturated with methane bubbles cannot support buoyancy in the normal manner. A ship caught above a methane eruption could theoretically lose buoyancy and sink almost instantaneously. This hypothesis gained traction in the scientific community after researchers observed methane craters on the ocean floor in other parts of the world. Whether such eruptions have actually occurred beneath vessels in the Bermuda Triangle remains unproven, but the mechanism is scientifically plausible. Rogue waves present another explanation. For centuries, sailors reported encountering walls of water in otherwise moderate seas, waves far larger than the surrounding conditions would suggest possible. Scientists long dismissed these accounts as exaggeration or hallucination. In 2016, researchers at the University of Southampton conducted modeling studies of the Bermuda Triangle region and concluded that conditions there are favorable for the formation of rogue waves exceeding 100 feet in height. 3 storm systems can converge in ways that amplify wave energy far beyond normal parameters. A ship struck by such a wave would have little chance of survival, and very little wreckage would remain above water long enough to be found. Then, there is the compass anomaly, and this one is particularly interesting for its historical implications. The Bermuda Triangle is one of only 2 places on Earth where magnetic north and true north align perfectly. This line, called the agonic line, passes directly through the triangle. For navigators using magnetic compasses, this alignment can create confusion if they are unaware of it or have not adjusted their calculations accordingly. In the era before GPS, before radar, before reliable radio navigation, a compass was everything. A navigator who expected a certain deviation between magnetic and true north and found none might conclude that his compass was malfunctioning. He might make course corrections based on faulty assumptions. He might become hopelessly lost in waters that offered no landmarks, no reference points, nothing but endless blue in every direction. Lieutenant Taylor, lost with Flight 19, reported that both his compasses had failed. Was he actually experiencing compass failure? Or was he observing normal behavior that he misinterpreted as malfunction because of the unique magnetic characteristics of the region? Finally, there are microbursts. These sudden, violent downdrafts of air can occur with little warning and create wind shear conditions that are extremely dangerous to aircraft. A plane struck by a microburst can lose altitude so rapidly that recovery is impossible. Microbursts are associated with thunderstorm activity, which is common in the Bermuda Triangle during much of the year. Each of these explanations works individually. The Gulf Stream moves wreckage, methane reduces buoyancy, rogue waves destroy ships, compass anomalies confuse navigators, microbursts down aircraft. But here is what continues to trouble investigators. The explanations account for how these vessels might have sunk. They do not fully account for why, in case after case, no wreckage is ever found. The Atlantic Ocean does not swallow ships without a trace under normal circumstances. Debris floats, oil rises, bodies surface. The ocean, indifferent as it may be to human tragedy, typically provides evidence of its victims. Yet the Bermuda Triangle has claimed vessel after vessel and returned nothing. No life jackets, no deck chairs, no slicks of fuel, nothing. The USS Cyclops displaced 19,000 tons. She carried hundreds of men. She simply ceased to exist. Flight 19 consisted of 5 aircraft with 14 aircrew. The search PBM Mariner carried 13 more. 27 men, 6 aircraft, and not a single fragment of aluminum or shred of fabric has ever been recovered. The conventional explanations are almost certainly correct in the broad strokes. These vessels were lost to weather, to navigation errors, to mechanical failures, to the simple and terrible arithmetic of the sea. There is no supernatural force at work in the Bermuda Triangle. There is no doorway to another dimension. There are no aliens harvesting ships from the surface of the water. But the absence of evidence remains troubling in its consistency. The Gulf Stream cannot explain every case. Methane eruptions have never been directly observed beneath a sinking vessel. Rogue waves, by their nature, leave no witnesses. Perhaps that is the real lesson of the Bermuda Triangle. Not that the ocean harbors some inexplicable menace, but that we still understand so little about the forces at work beneath its surface. For all our technology, for all our satellites and sonar and computer modeling, the sea remains capable of taking ships and men and leaving nothing behind. The families of the men lost aboard the Cyclops received letters from the Navy Department acknowledging their loss. Those families never received closure, never saw a grave, never understood what happened to their husbands and fathers and sons. The families of Flight 19 experienced the same absence. 14 young men took off on a training flight on a clear December afternoon and never came home. Their parents and wives and children lived the rest of their lives not knowing whether those men died in an instant or struggled in the water for hours waiting for rescue that never came. That uncertainty is perhaps the cruelest part of the Bermuda Triangle legend. Not the loss itself, which is tragedy enough, but the not knowing. The empty space where answers should be. We have built a mythology around that empty space. We have filled it with sea monsters and magnetic anomalies and holes in the fabric of reality. We have done this because the alternative is worse. The alternative is accepting that the ocean is large and dark and indifferent, and that sometimes people we love will sail out upon it and never return, and we will never know why. The Bermuda Triangle is real, in the sense that ships and aircraft have disappeared within its boundaries. The mystery is real, in the sense that explanations remain incomplete and evidence remains absent. But perhaps the deepest truth about the Bermuda Triangle is the simplest one. The sea keeps its secrets. It always has. And perhaps, despite all our science and technology and burning need to understand, it always will.